Like a lot of people during this strange time of COVID and lockdown, I've been watching The Last Dance on Netflix, which is this 10-part docuseries about the legacy of Michael Jordan and his time with the Chicago Bulls. And it got me thinking about who I would consider as being the Michael Jordan of breaking. Now, I know this is a really highly contested and subjective opinion, as there is no one single breaker that could ever really be agreed upon as being the GOAT. And this is of course the same in basketball. There are people constantly debating and comparing Michael Jordan's influence and his record to current superstars as well as previous ones. And there is still much debate about whether he is the GOAT. There are people constantly asking questions to one another about who is the greatest of all time, and they can always point to different stats that either show Jordan as being the best or show where he falls short. And in breaking and hip-hop culture, like basketball, it's the same. It isn't really about the stats that people tend to care about. It's about one's cultural influence and their legacy that matters. And so that's how I'm thinking about this question in relation to breaking and hip-hop. And so I guess with that being said, in terms of being a dominant figure and cultural force within the world of breaking, for me, the MJ of breaking would have to be B-Boy K-Mel. K-Mel is a legendary breaker who's had the kind of legacy and influence that MJ has had in the NBA. So when you think about individual breakers of all generations, those who've had a huge impact on the culture, and there's so many to name, like Ken Swift, Crazy Legs, Alien Ness, Po One, Rox Ride, and so on, which individual has had the most significant impact? And I'm not talking about which breaker is the best competitively. It could be easily said that there are many others who are perhaps more successful in terms of winning comps or who are more globally known than K-Mel. And this is where I think K-Mel is quite comparable to Michael Jordan, because he was doing it at a different time, a time where breaking wasn't like it is today. His impact, however, was immense, and it spawned a whole era of crews and breakers who have a style that is, I think, iconic, and iconic to K-Mel specifically. Another point to make about this is that there have been a number of young breakers who K-Mel took under his wing. People like El Nino, Casper, Prada G, Shamgod. They've become some of the best who have ever done it. K-Mel in particular, I think, was a character who was so influential to many because of his immense confidence. He had like a raw style and this fuck you, I'll take my time attitude, both in the way that he battled and in the way that he cyphered. He was like a crazy trash talker. He had the ability to kill it in both his tops, his floor work, his power, his freezes. He's like the epitome of an all-round b-boy. And this, I think, inspired a lot of people at that time who were looking towards the US and Europe as to what breaking was and how one ought to do it authentically. And on that point about his trash talking, this was a point also made in the Last Dance documentary about Michael Jordan, that he was like a really good trash talker. Those that know the Jigs versus K-Mel saga, or the hotel battle between K-Mel and Megas, will know that K-Mel was the king of trash talking. And so I know there are many popular breakers today, like Issei or Menno, Rox Ride, Vicious Victor, and might even be Wing from Jinjo Crew, who's probably won the most breaking comps in the past decade. I'm sure there's some list out there. I don't think any of these breakers, although all super talented individuals in their own right, have had the kind of cultural impact that K-Mel and the crews that he has been affiliated with, like the Boogie Brats, Floor Lords, Flipside Kings. They haven't had the influence that K-Mel has had. K-Mel's unique and raw style was hugely popular, and it influenced so many people around the world, which I think is evident by the way a lot of breakers are moving today. Just look at some of these clips and battles. In terms of original moves, original flow, a distinct and intense style that when people see they go, yeah, that's obviously K-Mel. I think it's clear that his style developed, from a certain place and time. He has the look of someone who was perhaps a hitter. For those that don't know, it's like a busker doing street shows. But there's definitely something unique and fresh about the way K-Mel moves. So for those that don't know, after a high point in the mid-1980s, breaking sort of died, though it was still popular in the US and in parts of Europe, but around the world in many places it wasn't. And then, in the 90s, with the introduction of new media technologies and the rise of some dope international breaking competitions, like Freestyle Session, like Alpha Fame, like UK Champs, and many others, it was arguably through watching breakers like K-Mel, who were the ones on top of their game during this moment in time. And it was them who inspired a lot of the new and emerging breaking scenes. So yeah, for me, this is why I think K-Mel is one of the greatest of all time. He's a breaker that could kill the beat, he had an incredible dynamic style, and he also rocked some of the most interesting and complex burns, which he seemed to improvise in the moment. Relating it back to my comparison between MJ and K-Mel, there's this one point made in the final episode of the Last Dance series in which someone remarks that one of MJ's greatest skills was not just being good at basketball, but being able to be really present in the moment. You know, he didn't worry about things that he couldn't control, he wasn't nervous, but rather he had this deep focus and confidence. And this is really hard, particularly when you're put under a lot of pressure. Anyone who breaks and competes in breaking battles knows this kind of pressure really well. In any battle, there's an insurmountable amount of choices that you're able to make before each of your rounds. Even during a round, there's a lot of choices to make, and these choices can and often do cripple people. So K-Mel was perhaps one of the best at flipping and recreating moves in the moment. He never seemed to hesitate or be confused about what he was going to do. He just always had this confidence in his abilities and his style that enabled him to go like round after round and keep surprising his opponents. And it should be noted that back in the early 2000s, battles didn't just go for 1 or 2 rounds for each dancer like they do today. They sometimes went for like 5, 6 or 7 rounds, and so you had to have this really deep arsenal of moves if you were going to make it to the finals. So I guess to end, of course, maybe in the future there will be others who, are active today, breakers like Victor or Issei or Menno, who are of course very inspirational to many of the younger generation. And many of those who are probably watching this video and thinking, who the fuck is K-Mel? He's not even relevant anymore. And this is of course the nature of breaking and of hip hop. There isn't ever like a fixed or complete story, it continues to shift and move over time. So there will of course be others who, like K-Mel has done, change the game, so to speak. Though I think K-Mel should be considered as the GOAT, as the MJ of breaking, as he was one of the, if not the best to ever do it. So yeah, let me know in the comments below of what you think of my opinion of K-Mel as the MJ of breaking. I'm going to leave you with this gem from K, which I think is still relevant today, and another reason why I think he is the best.
Break dancing to be one.
Well, a break dancer is going to probably have no style or no originality, but they probably going to have some real incredible dynamic shit that people can't do because they practice so hard. A b-boy ain't going to really care about a dynamic move. They're going to care about a dynamic style.